what we're going to work on now, you guys can kind of, well, actually scoot back just a little bit because I'm going to do a little bit of shooting. But you guys can kind of like circle around where you can hear me easily. Cool. There we go. So, are you guys familiar with the exercise of doubles? All right. Can someone explain to me what the application of doubles are and kind of what like the entire thing encompasses?
Predictive.
That's an aspect to it.
Yeah.
That's one aspect to it.
Keep your eyes focused on this.
No, that's not it.
Understanding what happens with your dot when you go
Yes.
up and down.
Yeah. Okay, that's an aspect to it.
Keep your eyes focused on the small spot.
That's a certain aspect to it. So ultimately what doubles is going to be a full body evaluation exercise in an observation exercise more than anything. All right. The goal is to land the gun or land all the rounds in a small spot, right? That's ideal, correct? But more than that, it's going to be when things start to spread or we start pushing the limits of it, is of trying to catch tail bits of information of those flyers that we do start to see. Does that make sense? You said predictive shooting. There's a certain degree of predictive shooting that we do in practical shooting. Do you guys all understand the term predictive shooting? You heard it to some degree or another. So predictive shooting is understanding essentially when the gun goes off, more or less exactly where the round's going to impact on the target based on, let's say, just exposure and time behind the gun, right? You can't just do something predictively without ever having been exposed to it before in your life, right? So I like to define predictive shooting as you don't necessarily need to see the dot 100% stable on the target. You don't even need to float it on the target. It can be just a blip of red or a blip of fiber or whatever it is to give you the permission parameter to send that round. All right. That's going to be at a very fast pace. Typical predictive shooting is very, very, very quick shooting. All right. Predictive shooting for most people is going to be anywhere between 0 and I would say 8 yards at a very, very fast pace. The goal is eventually to push predictive shooting even further back. And predictive shooting is going to happen on some targets, but not happen on other targets at the same distance. So if you have a partialed up target, you're not going to shoot it predictively. You're going to shoot it more as a reactionary. You're going to start blending it. What I like to tell people is there's not going to be a definitive yard line where people ask me all the time, where at what yard do you decide I'm going to not predictive shoot and I'm going to reactive shoot to a target? And I can't tell you what it is for each and every one of you because it depends where you're at currently in your shooting career and as far as your skill level goes, right? But the goal in this exercise is we're going to start at 7 yards and do this exercise, and then we're going to push it back a little bit further to where it's a little bit uncomfortable. And you're going to start looking for tail bits of information at the fast rate of fire that you're going to be shooting. Okay? I like to call it looking for tails is what was essentially what I kind of define it as. Okay?
Where the dot's lifting from? Is that what you mean by tails?
Very essentially, so in the exercise, right, in doubles, we're going to be calling every single shot. Now, the level of information we're receiving from every single shot is going to be different. If I told you to let's step back to if I told you go back to 25 yards and we're going to send 2 rounds at a target, honestly, I find calling my shot on a target at distance is way easier to call because the shooting is typically requires it to be a little bit at a slower pace because the dot's completely rising off the target and then it's coming right back. Versus, let's say at 7 yards when we're at when we're shooting this target, it's not hard to run the gun as fast as we possibly can run it and still hold it in the alpha zone, right? Where it really gets a little bit wonky is when we're pushing that 10 to 18 yards. That is the sweet spot where people in competition shooting start throwing really bad hits. Start throwing really not seeing things, not kind of getting in trouble, if that makes sense. Most decent shooters are going to get the hits at distance if they can just rely on their fundamentals. Now, if you have a breakdown in fundamentals, it doesn't matter what distance you're at. Well, let me rephrase that. You can have a terrible fundamentals and get all your hits at 5 yards. But if you have terrible fundamentals and you're at 20 yards, things are going to be all over the place, right? But if you have solid fundamentals like you guys all demonstrated back at the I think that's what, 20-ish, 20-esque, yeah. You guys can all shoot the center of the target at 20 yards. We've established that, right? So when I start having you guys pick up the rate of fire and you start seeing your groups push out, it's going to be the level of information that you're receiving is going to be kind of on the edge, if that makes sense. The goal is to start pushing our rate of fire and start trying to observe what's happening at that fast pace. It's a lot of exploratory, okay? Once again, I would love to have solid hits in the center of the target, but there's a certain degree of exploratory that we're not going to like consistently have this small fist-sized group in a target. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through doubles right now. But one thing you did actually talk about, I want to talk about. Every single shot we shoot, there is a certain degree of permission parameter behind it. At no point are we getting one sight picture and pulling the trigger twice. That does not happen. We get a sight picture for each and every single shot. That sight picture might be blip of red, right? But we need to have accountability for every single shot we send. And it's not this stupid like, oh, there's a lure behind each bullet. Okay, cool. That saying's been played out. The goal is, though, we need to have accountability for every single round we shoot so we can get permission parameter for every single round we shoot. Because the second we start moving and shooting, doing other exercises, if we're getting one sight picture and pulling 2 rounds, what's going to happen is we're going to start pulling off the target. We start getting really lazy on that second shot. The second call, let's say on a target, if we're moving, or like let's say we're exiting a position and we need to fire 2 rounds at a target, right? That second shot is just as important as the first shot. So we need to receive the same amount of information from the first shot to the second shot. And as soon as that sight lifts, or I see just enough information to confirm, yep, that was good, that's my permission parameter to leave. All right, you'll hear me talk about this later again when we start talking about, like, when we start actually moving and exiting positions, stuff like that. I'm just trying to tell you guys this in preparation so we hold ourselves to a high standard, that we're not that we're not going to leave the target before we're done and we've finished the target.
I wanted to make sure I'm understanding the drill is the bifurcation of, hey, the application of this drill in movement and you know, kind of a stage or an array, and the drill itself, because I guess I was always taught is the drill itself, the data you're collecting, is it repeatable? You know, how are you diagnosing, like, are you making pressure changes, things of that sort? So it was pull the trigger as fast as you can. Okay. Right? So in that particular static environment.
Yeah, so right now when we do doubles, we're not going to work movement yet. Yeah. But I just like to like squirrel out as far as...
But you're still saying it's 2 sight pictures, even if you're pulling the trigger as fast as you can.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm
not looking for any sight picture for the second shot.
I am 100% looking for sight picture for the second shot. A degree of sight picture.
I think that's kind of what we're trying to understand.
Yes, every single shot you take, there's going to be a certain degree of permission parameters that need to be met to send that second shot.
Normally these doubles are like the first one you see, and the second one is you don't see anything. You just try to pull it and see just based on your holding the gun.
So you're going to try and see every single, like each shot is going to have a certain degree of permission. Okay? What I'm getting at is at no point are we sending the second shot without any sort of, let's say, permission parameters. So like once we start firing at that very fast rate, it almost comes as almost like an afterthought.
But you still know.
But you're still getting the information. So each shot you gain information from the first shot and you gain information from the second shot. You know, does that make sense?
I was always gaining the information from the second shot after the shot.
It's going to happen and it's going to get closer and closer to the shot.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Well, every shot you take, you're getting information after the shot.
Of course. Right.
So now it's only going to it's going to tick up, and the information is going to be less and less information.
Like confirmation 2 really is what?
So confirmation 2 is more of like a floating dot. Are you guys familiar with confirmations? Have you heard of confirmations? Confirmation 1 is a blip of red. Confirmation 2 is floating the dot. So it's not going to be a stop stable dot, but it's going to be floating. And then confirmation 3 would be like if I'm shooting at this head box at like 10 yards and I want you to hold it in the credit card.
Steady, like
stop stable. Yeah, stop stable. And then confirmation 4 is going to be like stop stable, prep, like really think about the trigger pull, straight back. All right? Very rare. I mean,
like a hostage rescue shot.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Do we get into confirmation 4s really in practical shooting? Not very often, right? But it is something that, you know, you guys want to play on, especially like when I work on like 40-yard, 50-yard targets, stuff like that. You're working kind of confirmation 4s at that point too. Because you have to think about pulling straight back at that point, because like you have the time to do it because of what the shot requires. Okay? Let me go through, we'll get into doubles a little bit more. I'm gonna do a couple demos of it, talk about it, so you guys get a little bit better flavor of it. Cool. So I'm going to be relatively close to start, and then what we'll do is we'll do this exercise. You guys will do it on the line, and then what we'll do is we'll step back and do it just as aggressive, but with a little bit more distance added to it. Cool? All right. So for those that haven't done doubles, I want you guys to pay attention to like the stipulations of the exercise to start, and then we can work into the nitty gritty of it. All right. So the way this works is I'm going to draw the gun at the beep. I'm going to fire either 8 or 10 rounds. There's going to be 2 rounds, audible pause, 2 rounds, audible pause, 2 rounds, audible pause, and so forth. Okay. If you guys are training on your own, one thing I like to do is either load the magazine to 8 or 10 rounds, so you don't have to think about round count. If you load all of your mags to full capacity, this is going to get a really expensive exercise, because you guys will then eventually start just rolling through the entire mag, if that makes sense. Yeah, but you just limiting the round count in the mag will help with like stretching the rounds out. It also gives you more pauses to reflect on the exercise you just did. More reps, more pausing to think, more reps, more pausing to think, better growth. Cool. All right. So this is going to look a little something like this. I want you to pay attention to how I split the gun. Pay attention how you hear the pause. Pay attention to how I split the gun. Pay attention to the pause. And you'll see the faster the splits are, typically the slower the pauses are going to be. I don't care how long the pauses are. It's all about trying to get consistent splits so that we can have consistent numbers to then start to work on, if that makes sense. So it's going to look a little something like this. Stand by. Okay. You guys can stay there. You notice one thing? Did you hear the audible pause between the pairs? Yep. Pretty standard. I didn't have any crazy like bang, 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 bang. You could tell that there was 2 rounds, audible pause, 2 rounds, audible pause. It wasn't like a 10 round of bang, 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 bang all the way through. This sounds like stupid that I have to say this, but it like when you guys get behind the gun, if some of you guys will literally draw the gun and give me a 10 round bill drill, which is not what we want in this application. Okay, make sense? All right, so looking at this target real quick, it's not the best. I'm gonna warm up a little bit too, but looking at it, the stipulation is I'm looking for like a fist size group to start. Okay, now one thing I noticed, I don't have anything pushing to the left. I don't have anything pushing to the right. Nothing crazy high, nothing crazy low. All right. So what does that tell me I'm doing right?
You're doing something repeatable.
I'm doing something repeatable, but like my grip is good, right? The gun is more or less coming back to the same spot. I'm not muscling around. The trigger's coming straight back, correct? Like, am I stop and waiting on that wall at that rate of fire? No, I'm pressing straight through. Pulling right through it. Now, I'm not just jamming on it and pushing and having completely sloppy trigger pulls, right? But I'm not sitting there pausing on the wall either. Track? All right. So now that I've established that the target, fist size group, everything's looking good. I had relatively consistent splits. I didn't have any crazy pauses. I didn't have any crazy one, pause, one, whatever. I can start to look at my timer. So looking at my times, I had a 20 split, I had a 47 pause, I had a 21 split, 22 or 40 split, or let me go back, sorry. 20 split, 47 pause, 21 split, 40 pause, 22 split, 40 pause, 23 split. Okay?
You're going for like a cadence.
I don't say cadence as a cadence is more of an audible consistency. This is going to be a rate of fire consistency, if that makes sense. Cadence is like an audible permission parameter. Cadence is only time I ever use cadence in the scope of trying to in application is if someone shoots super slow and I'm trying to get them to speed up. I'd be like, hey, for whatever reason, it's not getting into your head that I need you to shoot faster. This is how it should sound. That's the only time I tell them, hey, that's when cadence ever comes into play. But most of the time, if you try to explain to people cadence, they start getting like, they try to meet the sound and they don't try to like, but the shots start going and start to bleed all over the place. Does that track?
Yep.
Okay. So now, yeah. What?
Like a typical split time with the second shot confirmation before you press the trigger, like 0.2.
So that's a pretty consistent split time, right? Not too bad. Like, but the goal is to go quicker, right? Like if I have the capability. So that's what I'm gonna try to do now. All right, get ready to go again. I'm gonna try to add just a little bit of speed to the equation. When I say adding speed to the equation, I'd like to think of it as a dimmer switch. I'm just adding a little bit, right? I'm not sitting there gonna dump it. Usually when I tell guys, hey, I need you to shoot a little bit faster, they just go, they like put the pedal all the way to the floor, right? And like it spreads out all over the place. When I talk about dimmer switch, I just want to give just a little bit more. It's going to be more of a feeling that you're giving it a little bit more than anything else. All right. Stand by. Okay. Didn't really move around too much. Still fist size group, correct? Nothing pushing crazy left or right, nothing crazy high, nothing crazy low. Looking at my split times now. Real quick evaluation. 16 split, 16 split, 19 split, 17 split, and 17 split. So you saw I added just a little bit. I went from like what, an average of a 22 split before down to like an average of like, let's say a 17, 16 split. Sure, he's not here. So I knew someone had to say something at some point. He's waiting all day to say something like this. So you guys understand you see how I added just a little bit to the equation. Everything's looking good. What do I do now? Let's see where things start to really fall apart. Stand by. All right. Now we're starting to see more spread. Starting to see a little bit more push to the left. Things are getting a little bit more sloppy, right? I am starting to grasp tail bits of information almost after the fact when I send that second round. Every single shot, I'm still seeing a blip of information, okay? It's still inside the alpha zone. Let's be real, I'm at like 5 yards. My grip is solid. I don't have anything crazy low, nothing crazy high, nothing crazy left, nothing crazy right, but I'm starting to see like a little bit of push to the left, right?
What do you account for that, right? Because if everything is still consistent.
So what's the adjustment am I going to make on this? It's going to be ever so slightly more dedication to trying to let the dot come back to the same place. All right. This is going to be more of a mental exercise, or let's say, I won't say mental, well, mental discipline than anything else, right? Well, real quick, still inside the alpha zone, not quite a fist size group, but let's look at the times. All right. 15 split, 12 split, 15, 12, 15. So I average probably around a 13, 14 split. It's not too bad. Relatively quick splits, right? In the scope of competition, the scope of practical shooting, very rarely do you ever need to split the gun that fast. Or does it ever really call for it? You guys all familiar with JJ Rakaza? The dude is notorious for having extremely slow splits. You watch him shoot a stage, it's hilarious. Like the dude, you'll rarely ever see him drop below a 20 split. He's very consistent. He's getting hits every single time. But you'll start to really notice, especially when we start working on transitions, that this type of shooting, it's super important, but this is not low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit's going to be in our transitions, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay? But it's super important to try to be able to replicate this type of shooting and start observing this type of shooting, observing what's happening. Okay? Now, one other thing. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
The interval between the two shot groups, does that matter at all?
No, it doesn't. Like the pause.
The pause, yeah, we don't have to like try to rush the pause, right?
No.
Okay.
The pause is going to be what it is.
Okay.
All right. It's just you're going to have it needs to just have a separation for the splits essentially.
Got it.
But you will notice the faster your splits are, generally the shorter the pause is.
Not on purpose, but just how it goes.
Correct. Like if let's say I step this back to 30, my splits are going to be what? Maybe 35s, 40s at that distance. My pauses at that distance are probably going to be like 60s.
Yep.
You'll just notice, like, just based on doing the exercise, the faster the splits, the faster the pauses, the smaller the pauses are. Cool. Let me do one more. And this is going to be, and you guys have probably all heard the term target focus shooting, right? The goal is, if I start, the goal is to drive my vision to a small spot on the target. When I run around a USPSA stage or any practical shooting stage, my goal is to drive my eyes to a small spot and have as much discipline as I can to bring the gun to the small spot, let the gun recoil, bring the gun right back to the same small spot. All right? If I start deviating or I start just getting sucked into the dot and or just seeing the target as one big brown blur, we don't have the definition of driving the gun right back to the same place. All right? Now this is going to be hard for me because I'm going to try to do a demo and see what you guys can pick up from it. All right, stand by. All right. So, fast splits, but now you're starting to see more of a vertical line, correct? Not enough confirmation. I'm looking at I had some tension going on, which didn't help the situation. But also super importantly is I just looked at center of brown and didn't pick a small spot. Did I throw any misses on the target at that distance? No. Did I run the gun super hard? Sure. Pretty much all 13s. Other than my tension one. But the point is, I didn't let the gun come back to the same small spot. If I can drive my vision to a small spot and let the gun come right back to it, it's going to bring your accuracy in exponentially. All right? It's going to hold you to a lot higher standard. So the goal is to always pick small spots. In the scope of USPSA, we don't have the luxury of having a little aiming reference. We have to make sure that we are, let's say on this target, if we don't have this black square, and we don't necessarily have a place that we can pick to aim at, we need to kind of judge based on the width of the target where the center of that target is. And sometimes that takes 1/10 of a second to recognize, hey, I need to bring the gun over. It's not just see a brown target, because if for some reason I'm transitioning to this target, and I'm because in the scope of USPSA or practical shooting in general, the goal is to put 2 rounds on every single target, correct? If I don't have the discipline to put the gun in the same spot, in the dead center of the target, and I'm just seeing a whole brown target as a whole, if I put the dot right here and the gun recoils and it comes right back to the same place, it's going to impact possibly in a less desired scoring area. So we need to be super strict, super focused on making sure we're picking small spots. All right, let me do one more. It's going to be a cleaned up one. All right, I'm not looking for 13 splits, but I'm looking to drive my eyes right back to the same small spot and keep the tightest group I can possibly keep. All right. Stand by. So, split the gun a little bit harder. I was a little bit pushy, but as a whole, nothing fell outside the alpha zone, correct? Gave it a little bit more. I was doing my damnedest to drive my eyes back to that small spot. At that rate of fire, I started getting a little bit more deviation. I'm okay with that. I'm seeing tail bits of information, but I didn't have this crazy high, crazy low streak, correct? It's always a work in progress. Cool?
Can you
tail bits of information concept? I'm missing that.
The tail bits of information are going to be the information that you receive at a fast rate of fire at the very tail end of when that shot went off. So like when the sight lifts, right? So if I were to slow fire, bang, I'm gonna, as soon as the sight lifts, that's gonna give me the information of more or less where the round went, right? Calling our shot. The faster we shoot, the faster that information comes as, correct? And then what you talked about is at some point we're shooting at a pace to where we can barely hold on to that information. Holding on to that really small bit of information, it almost feels like it comes in after the fact, is the tail bit of information I'm trying to hold on to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's when I refer to tails, that's what I'm talking about. Cool?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Everybody on the line, about 5 yards.